Welcome to the Brevard News Focus. My name is Kevin Jeffrey, your moderator, and I'm joined by our state representative, Chase Tramont of District 30, right?
Yes, sir.
And there's a lot going on, Chase. We had the governor over in Titusville last week, and he had a lot to say. And so, welcome to Brevard News, by the way. So, give me your sense of what's going on, and then we'll get to what the governor said. So, the issue is over immigration. And so the governor believes that he has the right plan, and the state legislature decided to go in a different direction. What happened?
Well, there's a lot that's happened. that's happened. There's a lot that's been happening. I'll start back with last year with incoming Speaker Perez. Really tried to send a strong message to the state of Florida that reminding folks that there are three branches of government. You got the judicial, you got the executive, and the legislative branch. And the goal of it, really, from leadership's perspective, is to kind of take some ownership back to the legislative branch, and reminding folks that we work with the governor's office, not for the governor's office. So I think what happened was when, my understanding, is that there had been discussions with the governor's office and leadership that there was not going to be a special session. And then when Speaker Perez was on an airplane, he received a voicemail from the governor saying, "Hey, I'm about to announce a special session in 8 minutes." Well, when he got off the plane, that's when he saw the message. He got the realization that, holy crud, a special session has been called, and we're being dictated what we're supposed to do. So better communication and coordination and collaboration, I think, from all sides should have been addressed from the get-go in order to have this. So now you've had kind of, you have the governor's plan and what he wants to get done, and then you have House and Senate leadership's plan, what they want to get done. Nobody is in disagreement, and there's no daylight whatsoever between us and the president as far as what needs to be done. How it gets done is a different ballgame. Governor has his plan. Leadership had their plan.
So do you believe that there was bad blood from the very beginning, from the special session being called without the knowledge of the speaker?
I don't want to speak for anybody, but looking back on what had taken place, again, the message that has been sent, we're a separate branch of government. We're going to, legislation is going to begin and have its origin from the people's house.
Is there a problem? I've read a lot of different articles that said that a lot of the liberal organizations are saying that the state legislature has finally decided not to let DeSantis run over you guys. I mean, is there a perception among those in the state?
Well, I wouldn't even put it that way, and I'm not suggesting. I'm just giving the facts as to how we got to this point to where there seems to be a lot of strife going on, and I wouldn't even call it a rift. I'd call it a disagreement of policy right now. But I wouldn't say that I want to do things in opposition of the governor. I mean, look where we're at as a free state of Florida. We're here. We're a red state because of Governor DeSantis. I recognize that, and I'll remind people. And I have no problem saying that I was the first one out the door to support him for governor, for re-election, for president. I mean, he has transcended Florida politics like no other elected official has ever had in the history of the state of Florida.
One thing that got me was that Perez said that he made the statement that he's a lame duck, talking about DeSantis. He's a lame duck governor, and it is politics. Or is it? Are they trying to move on now? Do you feel DeSantis is weaker than he was?
Well, I certainly wouldn't speak to that, and people can speak for themselves. By nature, his last 2 years in office, you could consider him theoretically a lame duck, but I don't think Ron DeSantis is ever going to be a lame duck anything. Again, you talk about somebody that has made this state, who won by only a few thousand votes in 2018, I think it was, and now here we are today, a red state. The president didn't even need to spend any resources here in Florida because he knew we had it locked up, and that's due to the decisions made by Governor DeSantis.
Now let's go down some of the things that he talked about in Titusville this week. Now, one of the things that he said is that the new legislation would hinder his ability to marshal law enforcement agencies around the state to execute deportation. True or false?
False. Because again, you look back, every law enforcement agency, every level of government And the bill even spells it out, that they're required to work with ICE. They're required to, I think the phrase in the bill says, use every measure available to them. I can't remember the exact terminology, but it means you're there to, it's all hands on deck. All the local government, all the local law enforcement. So there's no holding back local law enforcement, our sheriff's department, our police departments from doing what they're supposed to be doing. Everybody's supposed to follow through with federal law. They're supposed to work with ICE, and we ensure that takes place.
One of the problems with your bill is that he thought that the local law enforcement that did not adhere to the legislation should be punished, and that the state legislature disagreed with that.
I'm not sure what you're referring to on that, but I would say that any law enforcement agency, anybody that's supposed to enforce the law, if they're not performing their duties, they can be removed from office for malfeasance or whatever it is. That's already in statute. There's nothing that needs to be added to that. If they're not doing their job, then they can be removed from office. That already.
That's what he was saying, and he was saying that the bill the state passed did not provide for that, and there were some discrepancies.
They're not doing their job. They can be removed from office already. I mean, DeSantis, he's already removed 3 different elected officials. I think an attorney, a sheriff, I think. I can't remember exactly who, but that's already in place. We can already do that.
There was one other thing that he was saying, and I think it was regarding the local law enforcement officials like the police and sheriffs, but we'll come back to that. But he did say that we have a charge to keep, and that's to end the illegal immigration crisis once and for all, and that this bill, your bill that you guys passed, is weaker than what we have today.
I respectfully, strongly disagree with that.
Why would he say that?
Because there's obviously a messaging war that's going on, and he has his bill that he wants to get passed, and we have our way of doing that. Here's what I would say about it being a weak bill. First of all, I would say in our bill we have a automatic death penalty for any illegal immigrant who commits a capital offense, murder or rape, against one of our citizens. His bill doesn't have that. Ours does. There's nothing weak about that. It makes any crime that an illegal alien commits, maximum sentence is automatic for them, and anything that was committed, whether it's a second degree, automatically becomes the next highest up. It automatically becomes a first degree. There's nothing weak about this. I can promise you that. And here's the other thing I would point out. And this is more anecdotally as opposed to dealing with the direct policy, but I've mentioned a couple of those. Here's what I would say. I would remind people as to, number one, who's carrying this bill. This bill is being carried by a guy named Senator Joe Gruters. Now, who is Joe Gruters? Joe Gruters is Trump's number one guy in the state of Florida. Number one guy. He's his current endorsed candidate to be the next CFO of the state of Florida. And he is all in with Joe Gruters. Joe Gruters has worked very heavily with Donald Trump's administration, including Stephen Miller. And what took place was, if you recall, if anyone was following the bill, the day that it was being brought up for the House floor to vote, actually the Senate floor first, there were 10 recommendations that were sent over by the Trump administration to include in the bill. We included every single one of those. Our bill mirrors all of the executive orders that President Trump gave. We have communicated with Tom Homan and again, Stephen Miller and the Trump administration. And I would add this, it's named the Trump Act. Now, I understand the other argument that says, well, you can name it the Trump Act, but it still does. You're not going to pull the wool over the eyes of the people just by giving it a name. Here's what I would say in regards to that. True, it's a true statement, but I would say this in regard to Donald Trump is not a shy person by any stretch of the imagination. This is his home state of Florida. He's been noticeably silent on this.
I was going to ask you that. Why do you think he hasn't weighed in?
I don't think he wants to get in the middle of a public dispute between the governor and the Speaker of the House. I think if he came in on either side, I think it would be done in bad faith, because I'm sure he's communicated with both sides throughout this thing. This is an inter-party disagreement on policy. But I can tell you this. this being named the Trump Act, if this were weak, don't you think Donald Trump would be the first one out blasting this and saying, how dare you name this after me in my state of Florida when immigration was the #1 issue that I ran on? I think the silence is actually quite proof positive that it's anything but a weak bill.
The governor said that you were stripping much of his oversight authority and giving it to the agricultural commissioner, Wilton Simpson, and he believed that that's going to compromise immigration because of some of the problems that are in that office.
I don't think it'll do that. It's a fair argument to make, though. I'll grant the governor that. And truth be told, when it comes down to the end of it, is he really going to sign a bill that puts this all under the ag commissioner instead of him? I don't believe that that'll happen. I'm sure he's going to veto it, and that'll be a major piece of compromise. Hopefully that'll happen when the two parties actually get together. Because remember, they didn't coordinate. Neither party coordinated. Governor's got a lot of great stuff in his bill. I think we have a lot of great stuff in our bill. At some point, you're going to have to get together and pick out the best pieces in every bill and put it together in one. It may have to be passed in multiple different bills and broken up. I would expect that's probably what's going to happen. I don't have any inside baseball information on that, but I don't expect the governor to pass this. There are not the numbers in the Senate to override the veto. It is not even on the table to compromise with Democrats in order to override a veto. We're not going to put the tuition back in order to get a couple Democrats over anything of that.
Now, most people would agree that illegals should not be getting tuition to go to state colleges.
Correct.
And that was a big point that you guys made to put into this bill.
Yes. I don't know if it's in the governor's bill. I would imagine it is, but I haven't read it. But I don't recall seeing it in there. But I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak negatively on that. But I would say, again, having it under the Commissioner of Agriculture. You look at, that's the only cabinet position that has boots on the ground and manpower all around the state. AG doesn't have that. CFO doesn't have that. Nobody else does.
So is it possible that he said that the office is compromised because with it being farming and agricultural, that you have other entities, special interests that he's going to be more privy to?
I don't think so. And again, this is an elected position. So if he's not doing his job, then he can be elected out. Versus what the governor wants to do is put another bureaucrat in there to be the one, and we can't hold him accountable. We can hold an elected official accountable if he's not doing their job, if he is compromising, if he is having special interests, if he is catering to a certain area. I would say that actually probably the hospitality and hotel industry violates the hiring of illegal immigrants a lot more than farming does. That's what we've been told, and that's what the Trump administration has reported to us.
And that's one of the surprising things. Why do you think, because you keep hearing that a number of people think that it's only agricultural, but a lot of you and a lot of the numbers say that it seems to indicate otherwise?
I think the agriculture community has certainly, a number of years ago, they've really begun to clean up their act. They've seen the writing on the wall. They see E-Verify come. They see we're not going to tolerate that here in the state of Florida. Other industries need to start falling in line with that. But again, adding to why the Commissioner of Agriculture, again, he already has 200 law enforcement agencies under his umbrella already. They do a number of things, a number of coordination. They're in charge of inspections, making sure contraband isn't taken around the state. And each cabinet, and that's just how it's broken up. That's the nature of Florida government. Each cabinet has different responsibilities that they're in charge of. I would ask you or ask anybody else who the top fireman is in the entire state of Florida. The CFO is. Our accountant is the chief firefighter of the entire state of Florida. Why? Because that just happens to be his umbrella. He's in charge of holding that industry accountable and making sure they're doing their job. So with the Commissioner of Agriculture, that's going to be his job. He's the liaison. He's the coordinator that communicates the locals with ICE and with the federal government.
What are the major differences that you see in the two bills?
I can't speak to all of that because I don't recall. I can't speak to all of the governor's bills, all the proposals in the governor's bill, because I haven't read that and studied it nearly as much as the one that I was actually going to vote on. And mind you, what I'm not saying here today is that the governor's bill is bad. because I don't know it inside and out as well to make a determination. And I'm sure, given that he is Ron DeSantis, he's America's governor, it's not a bad bill. That's why I would like to see some coordinated effort to make sure we get the best of both worlds in there. But like I said, there are a number of things that we do have in there that are very strong, that are very tough, that I know that are not included in his bill. And again, our leadership and Joe Gruder's worked directly with the Trump administration, with Tom Homan, with Stephen Miller. It's not to call it a sanctuary state.
Yeah, he said that, and I was going to bring this up because there's a lot of, is this hyperbole that he says that you're turning Florida into a de facto sanctuary state? He says that if you're serious about immigration enforcement, you'd want to empower us to do the job.
I would just direct anybody's phone call directly to Tom Homan and Stephen Miller, the guys that gave us the included provisions to add to this bill, and ask them their opinion, because they've read over this bill, they've looked at it, and nobody has told us it's going to make us a sanctuary state. There is no such thing as catch and release in our bill, anything of that nature.
You think that's just hyperbole?
You know, if that's the word I'm going to use. I would just disagree with that assessment.
So Albritton and Perez says that they also said that there's a problem in that DeSantis' bill, it shall criminally charge local police officers who did not cooperate with state and federal immigration directives. And so at least DeSantis thinks that what should be done in this bill is that there should be some criminal charges brought against local law enforcement officers who didn't cooperate with ICE or federal immigration directives.
Well, I mean, again, when the new bill comes out, which I would imagine when this one gets vetoed and they have to go back to the drawing board, I'm not saying that shouldn't be in there. Again, you know, I'm not going to take anything away from the governor's bill and his proposal, because I know he's tough on immigration. I know he's tough on conservative values and making sure they're implemented. I've had the pleasure of working and serving in the legislature for the last 2 years. I had the pleasure of having him being my congressman for 6 years and watching him from day one in public office to where he is now. So you're not going to hear me criticize anything about what his proposals are or him as a leader or anything of that nature. But in regards to our bill, you know, there's obviously a messaging war that's going on, but it's not a sanctuary city bill. It's not a catch and release bill. It's certainly not a weak bill. You know, again, you have a mandatory death sentence for any illegal that commits a capital offense against a Floridian here or an American citizen. Tell me what's weak about that. Nothing that's weak about it. And I'd say his bill doesn't have that. I would imagine he'd probably want to include it in his bill.
So do you think there's a lot of gamesmanship going on, and ultimately this is going to be worked out and the two bills would probably be combined together?
I am hopeful for that, because our party needs it for sure. You know, and you know, it's unfortunate that you know, look, you've got 82 Republicans that voted for this bill. Is it a perfect bill? Of course not. There's never a perfect bill. But every bill, I would argue, is a perfect starting point. But the idea that 82 Republicans are voting for a weak bill after what we just endured the last 4 years with Biden, after working directly with the president and supporting him 1,000%, you know, I find that not the word hyperbole, but I find that very disingenuous to suggest that the legislature is full of a bunch of rhinos up there when we're working directly with the president's office on this.
Okay.
It's okay to disagree among Republicans about policy. We have it all the time. How many people called Ron DeSantis a rhino because he challenged President Donald Trump for the presidency? I mean, that was, I remember that, watching that whole thing, Ron DeSanctimonious, and everybody getting on the bandwagon saying Ron was trying to fix the election here in his favor to win a primary. And, you know, and I of course hated to hear that when they were accusing him of that, because that's not the kind of guy or leader that he is.
Thank you, Chase, for taking the time. I know you're on your way to an event and you took the time to give us some time with us. Thank you, and thank you from the people of Titusville in your district. You go all the way from Volusia all the way to 50, right?
Yes, sir.
In Titusville. Thank you for joining us, and go ahead.
I would add as well, not to the discussion, but I know the the tension that is being brought up right now. I know there's a lot of people that are disappointed, that are upset. But I would encourage people to actually read the bill. And it doesn't mean you're going to agree with everything on there. And again, it's probably not going to pass anyway, because it will be vetoed, and we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. But this is democracy in action. And do you really want a legislature that is not going to work the process and make sure that bills are perfected through the process that the Constitution lays out that it should be done? And I would also offer to your listeners my cell. Anybody wants to call me directly and have a further discussion. I don't hide from any of this, and I pride myself on making myself very accessible to the residents, especially when they put all their trust in me by casting their vote. I don't take that lightly.
How can I get in contact with you?
My cell phone number is 386-589-1320.
You don't hear very many politicians get a cell phone number.
Well, I'm not a politician. I consider myself a public servant. I know that's kind of being an overused phrase, but I'm a pastor. I'm always accessible to my church members, and I feel I should do the same as an elected official. I'll repeat it again: 386-589-1320. But I'm not going to have a conversation with anybody that just wants to have an argument and and lambaste me or anything like that. I can take it, but that's not constructive. I still want to remind people of the 11th commandment, and we're still the party of Reagan. We can have an honest debate and discussion and disagreement, but at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. We're here to support President Trump and his agenda, and to make America great and make Florida safe again.
Chase Tramont, so thank you for joining us on this edition of Brevard News Focus, and I hope you learned a lot of information about the immigration bill, and that it's cleared up some issues that you might have between the governor and the state legislature, and we'll see what happens going forward in the future. Again, you've heard from Chase Tramont, his phone number. Be sure to look him up and call him, not just to criticize him, but actually to encourage him if you have a chance to do that. Thanks again, Chase. We'll see you next time.